afternoon. Welcome to Discovering Justice. My name is Lucy Rivera, and I am the host of this program. This program can be viewed also on the internet at www.discoveringjustice.net. Today, we have a special guest, is Justice Horgan. Judge Horgan has been a judge for 12 years at the Boston Municipal Court, and I'm proud to say that that's the court that I normally attend. Judge Horgan,
good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you so much for coming today. Judge Horgan, tell us about yourself and tell us why you wanted to, how did it come up that you wanted to be a judge? How did you come up you wanted to be a lawyer in the beginning?
Well, many years ago, I attended Suffolk University as an undergraduate. I had a business law professor.
Yes.
And one day in class, the business law professor said to us, if anybody wants to see cases being tried, go over to the Boston Municipal Court. At that time, the undergraduates, we were almost right beside the Boston Municipal Court building. So I went over, and I sat in Justice Adlow's session. And I was amazed at what I saw and what I heard. And I saw lawyers trying cases, the volume of cases, the types of cases. I knew then that I wanted to be a lawyer. And I hoped someday I would be able to become a judge. And I'm happy to say that obviously I've obtained both of those goals.
And that's an achievement in itself, Judge Horgan. Judge Horgan, when you went to this courts, were you a law student?
Yes.
And what's
No, strike that. I went to the courts as an undergraduate.
Oh, okay.
Okay? As an undergraduate, I was a sophomore in college when I started going over the Boston Municipal Court, sitting there watching judges try cases, watching lawyers try cases. It was just a fascinating experience, and I would urge anybody who has any inkling of becoming an attorney, especially a trial attorney, if they have the opportunity to go into a courthouse and just sit, watch, listen, and observe.
Oh, great advice. Where did you go to law school?
I also went to Suffolk University Law School.
And that's close by the court.
Right next to the court. It was anytime I wanted to see any types of cases being tried, I had an opportunity to go to the Boston Municipal Court, and at that time Suffolk Superior Court was in what we call the new building. They were located there. I had an opportunity to see civil cases being tried, medical malpractice cases being tried. The land court was also very nearby. I had an opportunity to see land court hearings also.
Oh.
It's a wonderful experience by going to Suffolk Law and being in the vicinity of the courts and being able to go and watch and observe various cases. I learned an awful lot.
I think you've observed more than many other attorneys have observed you at land court. And Judge Horgan, you said you are at the Boston Municipal Court. What is it like to work at the Boston Municipal Court Central?
Well, first of all, the Boston Municipal Court is now known as the Boston Municipal Court Department. We are now a court department that is consisted of 8 divisions. Those divisions are the Boston Municipal Court Central Division, which I am basically there most of the time. There's also the Charlestown Division, the East Boston Division, the South Boston Division, the Roxbury Division, the West Roxbury Division, and the Brighton and Dorchester Divisions. And I can be assigned to any one of those courts, but usually I would say 95% of the time I'm in downtown Boston Central Division.
Very interesting. And what are your biggest challenges out of that location, do you think?
Biggest challenges?
Yes.
Well, there are obviously many challenges. I think that the biggest challenge that I try and strive to make sure occurs is that all parties are treated with dignity and respect, and that the litigants have a fair opportunity to present their case to the court.
I see, Judge Horgan. You preside in both criminal and civil.
Yes, we do.
But when you're in criminal court and you see people arrested, you're the judge actually they appear before you.
That's called the arraignment session. When someone gets arrested, they're brought in and they're arraigned.
Yes.
Right.
And what advice do you have for those people who get arrested? And
well, the most simple thing is don't get arrested.
That's probably the best advice.
All right? If you do get arrested, I would urge you to contact an attorney forthwith. That means immediately. And don't say anything until you've talked to counsel.
Right, but say for example they do get arrested and the police comes and they arrest you, and then they talk about their Miranda rights. In fact, we do have the Miranda warnings that you provided and prepared for court. I'll ask the studio to put up the Miranda warnings for our audience, and they are up there now. What are the Miranda warnings, Judge Horgan?
Well, the Miranda warnings come from a case, Miranda versus Arizona, and the police officers are required when you were arrested or held in any type of a custodial situation, they are required, before they attempt to speak to you, to give you the rights, and they are as follows. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to speak to an attorney and to have an attorney present during any questioning. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided to you at government expense.
Yes.
Also, the final thing is, do you understand everything that I have read,
yes,
which the police officer is supposed to ask the person arrested?
The person arrested. Okay, that's well, that's very important to all of you to find out, to know. The police officers need to read your rights before they elicit any statements out of people who they arrest. And Judge Horgan, so tell us about when people don't show up to court, once they are arrested and they have to come for their arraignment, they don't show up to court and then they get a warrant.
Okay.
What is a warrant?
Well, a warrant is basically a piece of paper that allows the police officer to arrest you on site.
Yes.
All right? And if you don't show up to court, the court's going to issue a warrant for you. It's called a default warrant.
What should they do if they have one of those?
If you know that you have a default warrant on you, or there is a warrant that has been issued for your arrest,
yes,
you should come into court immediately. If you have a counsel with you, fine. If not, and you need counsel, the court will appoint counsel for you.
yes,
The warrant will not disappear. It will not evaporate. It will be there for the rest of your life. So it's important that you come in and answer to the warrant. Now, if you come in, the judge will look at that. Most judges will look at that as a very good indication that, hey, if this person came in on the warrant, then he's probably a pretty good risk to allow out on bail. So it works to your advantage. Again, I cannot reiterate enough. 20 years go by and people still get picked up on actually very minor warrants. Could be a motor vehicle warrant that you didn't come into court for some reason, or summoned into court, you just didn't show up for whatever reason. And that can, 20 years later, you can get stopped for a very minor traffic violation. Next thing you know, you're under arrest, you have a warrant.
That's right. So once you have a warrant, unless you go to court and remove it, then the police officers can arrest you at any time. But there's also the other warrant that they have when people don't pay their fees at the end of the case, for example, or they...
You mean a probation violation?
For example, when they get dismissed, the case, and then they say, okay, you have to pay this fee, and then they never pay the fees. So there's also that warrant for, like, fees.
Well, that's not necessarily a warrant for your arrest. If it's brought forth by the probation department that fees are still outstanding, and the case cannot be resolved until those fees are paid, then the probation officer would ask for a probation warrant.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So, Judge Horgan, in speaking of how people come to court and how they act, what's your opinion as to what people should act like when they come to court?
Well, first of all, be on time. Court starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't start at 11 o'clock in the morning. You should be there. If the judge is making an effort to be there on time and the lawyers are making an effort to be there on time, then you should be there on time. There's extenuating circumstances and traffic conditions, et cetera, and the court will take into account for those if some unusual event happens. But be there on time. That's number one. Number two, dress appropriately. Going into court is not going to the beach. No T-shirts, no shorts. Dress appropriately. You do not have to put a business suit on or wear a long dress, but just dress appropriately. Have respect for the court. There are some judges, if you come into court dressed wrong, a judge will turn around and say to you, hey, go home, change your clothes, and then come back. So it can be a great inconvenience.
Right. So the court proceedings are a serious and formal event, and a very important one in people's lives. So if you're going to go to court and people are chewing gum and they're acting with some sort of cavalier attitude, it's probably not going to be very helpful.
Definitely do not go into a court situation with an attitude. If you go into court with a situation, I can guarantee you things are not going to go your way.
No. And speaking about your way, another thing that should go your way is bail. When, for example, as a judge, you need to decide, you're the one who decides whether or not to set bail on a case.
That's right.
What is bail?
Well, bail is a sum of money that is deposited on behalf of an accused as a guarantee that the accused will appear for trial.
Oh, look, what we have on the screen now is what are the considerations for a judge to decide in deciding whether or not to impose bail.
Well, a judge will look at many factors whether or not to impose bail. He will look at obviously the nature and the charge of the incident. He will look to see whether or not there is any history of defaults on the criminal record. He will look to see if it's a domestic issue. He will look to see prior convictions. In other words, the judge is trying to balance. The defendant has a right to be let out or on bail. And if the judge cannot determine or has determined because of the history of defaults and of the criminal record and the nature of the case that the defendant is not a good risk for bail, then the judge may not set bail, and hold him without bail, or the judge may set a very high bail.
Yes. So if the judge sets a very high bail, it's because there is evidence that the person does not come to court, and that's not his habit when every time the courts are imposed. And how do you know that? Because of his record.
That's right.
And the history of defaults.
History of defaults. You don't show up to court, that's called a default. Even if you come in and remove it on the same day or the next day, it's still a default and it'll be on your record. It'll show me where it's been removed. However, it'll be recorded as a default.
So when people don't show up to court, that's a default for them in their record, and that's when they get a warrant for their arrest.
It could be issued a default warrant, that's correct, right.
I see. Judge Horgan, what do you think about the jury system? What do you think about juries?
Well, I think the jury is the backbone of our democracy. When one is arrested, he is entitled to a jury trial, if he so elects, and that jury is to consist of members of the community. In other words, he's being judged by his peers. And it's the foundation of our society, the jury system.
Yes, I agree. It's a wonderful system. For our members of the audience, if you just came in, my name is Lucy Rivera, and I am the host of this program. We can see this interview with Judge Horgan at www.discoveringjustice.net. And you could also contact me at lucinda.rivera@discoveringjustice.net. And we're here with Judge Horgan, who is a judge at the Boston Municipal Court Central right now, where he's sitting there for 12 years. Judge Horgan, I just wanted to also ask you about the warrants. I wanted to ask you about, I wanted to ask you about the restraining order, about 209As.
A 209A.
And we do have something that you prepared for the people seeing us today. If we can put it up, it's about 209As and the restraining orders. But what is a 209A?
A 209A is a civil order that is issued when a person comes in and is afraid for the person's safety or physical harm, the court will issue what they call an abuse prevention order.
Yes, and we have it up on the screen now.
All right?
Yes.
And it's intended, obviously, to provide protection from physical or sexual harm caused by force or threat of harm from a family or household member.
Yes.
And it's designed to keep the abuser from hurting that person anymore.
Who can get a restraining order, Judge Horgan?
Well, a restraining order, a 209A is commonly referred to as a restraining order. But there are three types of orders. There's the emergency order, okay? Then there's the ex parte order,
Yes.
and then there's the extension order, which can be given for up to a year.
Okay. And what's the criteria to issue this restraining order?
Well, first of all, what I would look at to see what type of relationship the person seeking it has with the defendant that the order may go against. Is it a spousal relationship or a former spousal relationship? Is it a family relationship? Is it a dating relationship? Is it a household?
Yes.
People living in the same house type relationship? There has to be some type of relationship between the parties for an abuse prevention order to issue.
I see. And so it's mostly seen as in like...
Unlike an harassment order.
Yes.
Now, a harassment order can be a stranger can have an harassment order against him, but the point to remember on a harassment order is that it has to be done at least 3 times.
Okay, before you can
seek an harassment order. For example, an harassment order would be, let's say 2 neighbors having some type of an argument over leaves falling on one person's yard, for example.
Yes.
And it's back and forth, and words is exchanged, and this happens over a period of time. Well, under the harassment statute, the neighbor could go in and seek, not saying it would be granted, but could seek an harassment order. That neighbor could not go in and seek an abuse prevention order under Chapter 209A.
I see. Very interesting. So now we know when and what's the criteria to get a restraining order or harassment orders. But Judge Horgan, you know how we're exposed to harassment or all these notions of the criminal system and the problems with the judiciary. What, in your opinion, is the biggest misconception with the judiciary, with the judicial system?
Well, there are many. I find that there's a very serious problem that's going on with jurors. I call it the Csi Syndrome.
What is that, Judge Horgan?
Well, the CSI, as we all know, is a television show in which crimes happen.
Crime scene investigation.
Crime scene investigations in the TV shows. No matter how outrageous or how difficult the case may be, they're always resolved within that 1 hour of television. That's just simply not. That's simply not real life. All right, crimes are not solved within an hour. And television makes it look so easy, and television takes the liberty of having all sorts of tests performed on forensic items in which most police departments don't have the luxury of having, or the time or the money to do some of this forensic testing that CSI keeps on showing on a weekly basis.
I see. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but I wanted to ask you, in that vein, what do you think about judiciary independence?
Judicial independence, obviously, is extremely important. Judicial independence means that a judge can act fairly and impartially without the threat of anybody looking over that judge's shoulder, or the threat or any type of political influence on the outcome of the disposition of a case.
So that means that the judge can be free to make his objective decisions?
Absolutely.
Without any influence?
Undue influence, absolutely.
And that's the way we achieve justice and fairness?
That's right.
And what do you think about the election of judges?
Well, the election of judges is an issue that is being talked about in this state. It is a reality in some states, and however, I ask you a question. If you're coming in to a courtroom,
Yes.
and you now have found out for the first time that the lawyer on the other side was at that particular judge's fundraiser the night before, how would you feel?
I would feel that there's some sort of bias towards the person
It's a
who...
natural thing. If somebody has contributed to your re-election campaign, I know these judges say they can be free and impartial. I find that very difficult to believe.
Right. For example, you're talking about if someone gives your campaign $100 versus the other lawyer who gives $1,000. I wonder if a judge could be really impartial in that situation.
Possibly in that situation, but what happens when that lawyer and that lawyer's law firm raises thousands of dollars?
Right.
Then I think there's a very strong issue to be looked at as how fair and impartial can that particular judge be. Just human nature.
So what do you feel about the election? Yay, no?
Absolutely no.
Terrible idea.
Worst thing that could happen.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the daily things that you see in court as a judge. When you see people on probation, people don't know what probation is. What is probation?
Well, all the probation is conditions set by the court on a criminal case. And the probation officer makes sure that whatever conditions that are set by the judge are adhered to. It could be anything. It could be many things. It could be monetary things, or it could be programs that the probationer must attend. Could be anything.
I see.
And the probation officer brings it to the attention of the judge that the person is in compliance or the person is not in compliance.
Okay. And are there any fees for this probation?
Well, it depends. Probation can be supervised, and that's which the probationer must pay $65 a month to the court, or it could be unsupervised, in which the probationer would pay, I believe it's $50 a month.
Now, but remember, a lot of the people who go to court don't have any money, and they can't pay these fees. What's the alternative out there for them?
If that's the case, then the court should be made aware of the fact there could be an issue of money, then the court will impose what they call community service alternative. And the probationer can work those probationary fees off through community service.
I see. Very good. So, Judge Horgan, what do you think about, should people hire a lawyer when they go to court?
It depends what the matter is.
How should people go about hiring a lawyer?
Well, you would referrals. Talk to friends.
Yes.
I know many lawyers advertise out of a phone book. I don't think that's the best way to pick a lawyer.
That's good to know.
But depending on what your matter is, if you have a criminal matter, going out and hiring a real estate attorney, I don't think is the wisest thing to do, unless that real estate attorney is also does a lot of criminal work.
I hope people don't hire a real estate attorney to defend you to defend people in the criminal trial.
The bottom line is, whomever you hire, make sure that person is experienced in the area that you have hired them for.
Okay. Well, Judge Horgan, we have run out of time. But,
Already?
Already, but just tell me, are public defenders and people who do public work and advocate program, are they good in your opinion?
They are the backbone of our court system.
Yes.
Without public defenders stepping up to the plate on a daily basis, they do an admirable job.
Oh, thank you.
And there's some wonderful attorneys out there who don't get enough credit for the work that they do on behalf of their clients who are public defenders.
And Judge Horgan, it was a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate it. For the people that are listening to us and watching us on TV, thank you so much for watching and following the program. My name is Lucy Rivera, and I am the host of Discovering Justice. And this program and all our other programs can be viewed at our webpage, www.discoveringjustice.net. And I can also be reached at lucinda.rivera@discoveringjustice.net. I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to hear any of your suggestions and questions, so please contact us. And today we had Judge Thomas Horgan, Judge Horgan, who is a judge at the Boston Municipal Court, and he has been a judge for 12 years. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And it was delightful to learn about what it is to
My
be
pleasure.
in court. Thank you to all of you.